Good morning. On this freezing 31st of May, thank you for joining us as we start observing the 1 week for child protection. And from this day onwards, we say we are going to not only be confining it to 1 week, but we are going to go and do the 365-day activity because we shall not. It doesn't even make sense for us to say we have a week where we are more concerned about child protection. We appreciate that government has given us this week through the Department of Social Development, and we acknowledge that there's a lot to be done in partnership with the department. However, as a movement, as that's in the picture, we have for the last 8 years been looking at the interest of the child, and we believe that it is paramount. On this freezing morning, there's a child who's homeless. On this chilly morning, there's a child walking barefoot without much on his back. On this cold morning, there's a child waking up with an empty stomach. This child is mine and yours, having fallen into the cracks of society and family. Society that isn't and hasn't been inclusive of even the children. Families that are broken, the brokenness that is felt blow by blow by the little innocent children. Innocent, for they didn't choose to be here, nor did they choose a woman or a man that gave birth to them. Our heart bleeds at this very moment for this very child. For one day, this child will be told, you have a choice to make. This very child will be told, stop making excuses. This child will be told, you need to do better. Yet today, our mothers, fathers, men and women in courts, social work, police services aren't putting the best interest of the children on the table, but their own interests, and in most cases, either the father's interest or the mother's interests. Some of them, a handful of them, we support them because they do their best, but it shouldn't be a matter of a handful. It should be everyone, every single one of us. I take that pledge to say, as of this moment, going forward, I shall not sleep without thinking about the child. And I thank you all for joining in. Let us engage over the next 5 days and make sure that we have a better understanding of what the interest of the child is and what is it that the children need to be protected from. On every day, we will then look at a different aspect of this to make sure we all understand it so that we all can support it. I thank you.
Good morning and welcome to those who are tuning in, who are joining us. Thank you, Daddy Mish, for that wonderful and awesome message. This week we kick off Child Protection Week, and we have a series of webinars that are coming. And right now, I just want to share a message of support that was sent to us by our very own Udedi Koketso. So I'll put the message on the screen for you. That's the message from one of our Exco team, and I shall bring back Udedi Mish onto the picture. Daddy, thank you for your message. It is much appreciated, and thank you for making the time. Could you just share with us briefly maybe the vision behind us doing this first thing for the first time, running it as a webinar? What was the vision behind it?
Thank you, Daddy. The vision behind this is to say we have over the years been looking at the challenges that face children. We have engaged with various stakeholders, including the social development within the family forum. And we have seen how, unfortunately, in reality, the white paper is there about families and it prioritizes children. The white paper is there about gender based violence and it prioritizes children. However, there isn't much happening on the ground as far as the children are concerned. A lot of fathers obviously come to us because they have issues with access to their children. And we look at this and then we say, this access to the child by the father, it's not just about the father's right having the access, it's about the child's right having the access to the parent. So we need to then look at it from the point of view of children. And then we then thought of, okay, let's go in and really look at it and say, if we are to make an impact, would just having that 1 day seminar or webinar be enough? Or do we need to give ourselves enough time? Because sometimes we have webinars whereby it's an hour-long webinar, but it talks about child protection in totality, not giving each and every aspect of the child's protection the right attention. So when we say we're going to talk about physical abuse, we stick to that and we understand it and how it escalates and how it starts. We look at bullying. When we talk about bullying, that's why we thought let's partner with other people from other organizations that are actually working at this. You know, we don't want to be the only voice, because our voice is always out there on social media, on different platforms that we have, to say children need to be protected from their own mothers, from their own fathers, from the society around them, from the bullies at school, from abandonment, from all sorts of ills that society has come to give. So we're hoping that the 5 days would actually help us gain some momentum in this, and we appreciate that we have the support of the different organizations, and yes, we're looking forward to serious, meaningful engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daddy Mish. I know that you have other commitments at the moment, so we shall release you so that you can attend to those. Thank you for giving us your time.
Pleasure is all mine. Let God lead us in this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Daddy. Okay, now I shall bring on our guest. She is a phenomenal woman, a mother in her own right. And I think it's exciting that, we have partnered with her and that she is part of us launching this Child Protection Week. I will not endeavor to introduce her, but I'll allow her to introduce herself. Mommy Karabo, you can unmute.
Unmuted. There we go. Good morning.
Welcome. This is exciting for me because I've watched you on your Black Mom Chronicles page. I've enjoyed your talks, followed you a lot, and I thought, can't let this go by without us ever engaging. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. And yes, I've definitely seen the engagement on my platforms when I've had previous conversations on fatherhood and many other different topics, even stuff about, miscarriage. You've really been there and engaging on my platforms, and I really appreciate it. So I'm equally excited to be having this conversation. So I'm great, man. It's a Monday. The energy is high, so it's a good day to converse.
Yeah. So just briefly introduce yourself to the Dads in the Picture audience, because I know that this is also going out to your page, but just quickly introduce yourself to the Dads in the Picture audience and those who don't know you.
Cool. So
who are you and what do you?
Cool. So as you said, Mommy Karabo Mokoena. I am a parenting writer. I am a mommy blogger. So I've really dedicated my life to the parenting space because I think there are some, profound conversations that we can have in the space to influence, a different generation of parents. I live for that, just writing and creating content to influence a different generation of parents that see themselves and the world and their children differently by sharing each other's stories. So I write for like some of the coolest parenting publications in South Africa, including my own, which is Black Mom Chronicles, a blog I started about 3 years ago and has really grown so much, not only in numbers, but in terms of the kind of content that I'm creating in the space. And one of my most favorite ones is the subject of fatherhood. Because the girl that grew up without her father, I would really like to see a generation of that happening less and less because of how powerful the role of a father is. So that's why I'm so excited to be having this conversation, because it's dads in the picture, and adding a female voice here
Yeah.
is exciting for me. So that's what I do. I write and I create content for a living. And I'm a conversationalist. I love having conversations about really important stuff, because I believe conversations start revolutions. And if we want to change perspectives, we can do it one conversation at a time.
I love that. One conversation at a time. And this is the first of those many conversations. It's exciting to just partner with phenomenal people like yourselves. Tomorrow we have Mami Ayanda Tetiana. She is a parent coach.
I'm familiar with the work, yeah.
Yeah. So we've also partnered with her. She's part of our team as well. Hoping that you will be going forward.
I'm definitely game. I'm definitely game. There's power in collaboration. So if we can add voices together, the voices become louder, so the effect becomes a lot more profound. So let's do it.
Great. Yeah. So getting into today's conversation, I tried not to prepare a set of questions because, as I've said earlier to you offline, that I don't want to kind of put you in a particular direction or send you towards a particular narrative that I may want you to say, because you may have a lot more and you may have a broader scope within which you want to cover the topics. So I will then first ask you to just, in your understanding, just generally define for us what physical abuse of children is, and maybe how we could, those who are on the outside looking in, or those who are on the outside ignorant, how can we easily pick up, or how can we pick up the abuse when it happens, and how do we differentiate between the physical abuse and actual discipline?
I love that you say that, right? The actual physical abuse versus discipline, because what I'm finding is happening, and I'll definitely go to the main question. What I find is happening is that as parents, we do a lot of weird stuff to our children in the name of discipline. And that's what I'm also just dedicating myself to now, to talk about the concept of discipline, to say, listen, there are ways to discipline our children that don't require us to become physical with them. And I will definitely elaborate on what I mean by that. So in terms of the concept of, so I'll look at it as the concept of child abuse, right? Because it happens in actual different elements. So I think the abuse of children kind of manifests itself differently, because it could be emotional abuse. Like we are learning even in the adult space, is that abuse happens differently. It doesn't mean umuntu uyakshaya just for it to be called abuse. There could also be emotional abuse, which also is very evident and happens in a parenting dynamic as well. So what's been happening, and what I find happens a lot, is that we think the concept of child abuse is a subjective one. So it's like household can decide what they define as child abuse versus what another household defines as child abuse. And in particular, when it comes to physical abuse, it's predominantly a phenomenon that happens in particular in Black communities. And it might be a controversial thing, but we as Black people really believe that those are the type of stuff that you hear about as you grow up, to say, yeah, if you want a child to listen to you, you have to beat them. So us then beating our children doesn't seem like physical abuse, because we have defined it as a way for us to teach them to be a lot more disciplined, and a lot more, a lot less disobedient. So we are trying to make our children obedient by physically hitting them. So then the definition for us, if you are a parent that believes that then the definition for you is very different. Like that, what you're doing doesn't kind of denote as child abuse or physical abuse, whereas in essence it is. Whether or not, and the problem is, it's a generational thing. That's where I find the problem is, and that's why I'm advocating as I am right now, because I believe in breaking cycles. We have to break cycles at some point, and ukshaya umtana for me is definitely a cycle I want to break in my in my household, because I grew up if I did something wrong, then I am bound, like, when they make you pick up the stick, like, go fetch it so that I can deal with it, like that's a kind of household, that's a kind of thing that we grew up under. And you remember how scared you were in that moment of getting disciplined like that. So why would you want the same thing for your child? So we have to kind of break that cycle at some point, because our conditioning really influences the kind of parents that we want to be. But I think for me, the big thing about ending physical abuse is us understanding that we can break the cycle and parent outside of our own conditioning, and actually choose how we want to raise our own children without the influence of, I've been shower, but I turned out okay. Did you really? Did you? Was the relationship with our parents good, or did we just respect them and we were fearful of them because we knew if we did anything wrong, we're going to get.
When you talk about Ngwanu Utlakalitlalo, there's something that I just thought of. I engage a lot with my son, and sometimes when for example he's taking a bath or I'm taking him out of the bath, and I ask him to turn, and he's kind of stubborn. I remember how as a child myself, like you would be shaken, or when you don't want to do certain things, you'd be shaken. And I realized it was so violent in a way, so rough. Sometimes I look at how we discipline him and compare it to my childhood. It kind of looks like it was violent the way I grew up. But even though at times I may just kind of tap him on the bum a little, it's not that kind of angry disciplining or spanking. It's just to say, hey, come now, you know? And I realized there was so much, either there was so much anger or frustration that was there on those who were raising us, be it our parents or our guardians or our immediate family. But then there's a way in which we discipline him that does not have that sense of violence, that sense of frustration, that sense of anger. So maybe then I think we need to check ourselves as to how am I feeling now before we even bother going into disciplining a child. I believe there's a difference between discipline and punishment. And I think some of us were punished rather than disciplined.
You know what? You are talking to something so important, because nothing good comes from a place of anger or frustration. So you cannot hit your child and say, I'm doing it out of love. How? How is instilling pain into such a small human being love? How is you hitting someone coming from a place of love? Because in that moment you are frustrated because your child is wasting time in the morning because you have to get to work and you have to do this. Oh, time is running. I don't know, how old was your child at the time when you realized that?
He's now, I think it's things that I'm realizing now that he
Yeah.
is what I think I started realizing it. Yeah, this year he's 4.
A 4-year-old has no concept of time. So sometimes
Yeah.
the problem is we are expecting kids to be a lot more mature than they capably are, like
Yes.
they don't understand that what it means to be late. They don't understand that you have to get to work and all of that. So they are 4 years old. There is a time and place for everything. And we have to understand that when it comes to disciplining children, to say, my 4-year-old has no clue that I've got stuff to do, right? So
Yeah.
when I'm acting out of a place of frustration, I am ignoring the fact that this little human has no idea what I am actually experiencing at this moment. So because of my own frustration and my own pain, oh, I'm gonna get in trouble with my boss, yada yada yada. Now I'm taking all of this frustration out onto a little human being that does not understand. Now I'm going face off with a little person that has no idea. So what I'm noticing happens is, listen, our parents did the best they could with what they knew, right?
Yeah.
That's the fact of life. So we are at a point now where I think we know much better, right?
Yes.
So we have to allow ourselves to transition. Now we have a
And
better
parenting has evolved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything evolves. That's why now you can get cancelled like this for stuff you wouldn't have gotten cancelled for saying 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's not 5 years ago. We are in a different time now. We are in 2021. Black people are talking about triggers. You're triggering me. Oh, you are toxic. We didn't talk about stuff like that a few years ago.
Yeah.
Now we are understanding mental health. Now I can recognize as Mommy Karabo, oh, this child is pissing me off. Because kids can piss you off, Shem. I think sometimes they are brought on this world to just make us angry, right? So when you realize that your child has made you angry, are you going to go face off with a 4-year-old,
Yeah.
almost sharp, and get frustrated and shout? Or are you going to realize and take a mature decision as an adult to say, okay, I'm pissed off. Let me take a moment. Let me breathe and then come back. Now, here's where the basis is, right, Daddy, is that we need to get to a point where we recognize the children are just human beings. That's why they have rights, right? I mean, the Constitution recognizes children as human beings. That's why they are given rights, just as we adults are given rights. That's why there's a whole Child Protection Week, because we need to. It's emphasizing that children are human beings with rights that need to be protected. This is why we're doing this. So us not now, when I did something wrong, I hardly remember a time where my guardians set me down to ask me, why did you act the way you did? Why did you do 1, 2, 3? No one engaged with me regarding that. So no one asked me how I felt. No one asked me why I hit the girl that I hit. I just got smashed for, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But I'm like, just sit down with me and ask. That's what I needed growing up. So now, because I am acknowledging that my child is a human being, when she does something wrong that usually you would get hit for, sit them down. Sit them down and understand, because what we are learning is that every emotion that a child experiences has a source. This is what we're learning now. There's a concept called conscious parenting, right? Now you're consciously recognizing that every emotion your child is experiencing has a source. The other day, I saw a lady, her daughter was so frustrated, she hit the TV and the TV cracked.
Yeah.
Right? So now, as an adult, yay, you are boiling. You bought this TV, got 15,000 rands.
Yes.
Probably your last money, ne? You paid for television. And now this child going to hit it broke. Now the lady is asking parents, what can I do? Parents are like, woo, I'm shy. I'm shy. Yo, my TV. Like, oh. And the amount of parents that said that concerned me. because I'm like, whoa, your child was really frustrated. What was happening? What is the emotion that you're experiencing? Because then, if you're going to hit them because they hit the television, now you're not dealing with the emotion, the underlying emotion that made them act out like that.
Oh,
So,
yes.
right? They pissed off. You must give them some time. You're pissed off. Go out, go breathe, and then come back and try and handle it as calmly as you possibly can to understand. Also trace it, because I mean there was probably something that happened that led them there. As much as we experience emotions and frustration as adults and we hit our phones against walls and stuff like that, kids experience the same thing, but they don't have the tools to deal with them like how we do. When I get frustrated, I sit and I breathe and I feel better. Kids don't know how to sit and breathe and feel better. They don't know what that means. And that's where the protection comes in place, where a mother and a father is given the responsibility to guide and protect their children. So when your child is experiencing frustration, it is your responsibility as a parent to help them maneuver and navigate that kind of emotion, or else it's going to lead to them breaking the television, and then now you're pissed off about it, and now you're ignoring the fact that they were experiencing a much stronger and deeper emotion. So now you're not teaching them how to handle the emotion. You're not protecting them. You're going to shout and hit.
I think another thing what we miss in that whole story again in the lessons we could pick up is that you could easily replace the TV at some point. If it's insured, just by a phone call. But one, you haven't dealt with the frustration, and two, you have now kind of created resentment in that child.
Yes.
That you value the TV more than them.
Yes. Yes. You prioritize one over the other, and your child can feel that. Children are smart, actually. They can feel that. So, you totally ignored me.
Yes, you are defending the TV, and perhaps at times it's because the child was frustrated because you were looking at the TV,
at the television,
or you were telling them, "Wait, I am watching something," instead of either pausing or just focusing on the child and say, "Wait, Nana, I'm gonna focus on you just a little bit. Can I just finish this?" But now we've gone on a different tangent. So two things: the child is frustrated. The initial frustration is not addressed. Secondly, we've created a resentment, and we've created the impression that the object is more important than the child. But now the question is, how do we as parents who constantly engage in those behaviors get to stop that? How do we learn to evolve with the times? So it's not going to be easy, I'll admit, to say, this is how I was raised.
Yeah.
But now, how do I parent differently, but still instilling certain values within the child?
Yeah.
So that's the first part. Another part that I'd like you to talk to is for those children who are simply just physically abused. No love, no nothing, but just abuse. How do we identify and how do we end that?
So your first question is going to the idea of breaking the cycle. So I think particularly as Black people, we have a generational baggage of things that we really don't need now in this generation, right? So what I'm finding is happening, even just in my household, right, is that when a decision is being made about our child, that is based on how I was raised, we question it, right?
Yeah.
We're not just doing things because that's how it was done. It's like, no, why is it being done like that? So that's why it starts. Like we have to start questioning our own decisions, because the concept of conscious parenting is that you have to be conscious of yourself first. So you have to do self work first. before you are able to kind of readjust and realign your parenting with your children. Like the work is with you. So where you can start is identifying your triggers. So if you're asking your child to do something and they say no, and then you get pissed off, figure out, investigate why you got angry, right? Are you part of a generation that was taught a child is supposed to constantly obey everything that you're saying, or maybe your child is actually just busy with something that's really important to them right now, and they'll attend, because that's what you're also teaching them. When you're unable to do something, and I think that's where the problem is, right? Is that we act in one way as parents, and then we're expecting our children to act differently. Like we teach them, no, I
the
want
hypocrisy.
exactly. So we are mirroring certain behaviors. When our children act out, we get angry about it. So if a certain behavior that your children displays in the household is triggering you and making you angry, triggers are always a signal of work that needs to be done. If you are acting out of a place of triggers, then you know, I need to step back. And this is the self work that is required for us to be able to transition how we live our lives personally, and how we engage in relationships with our children as well. Changing parenting dynamics is identifying for it. No, Kara, why do you think it's okay to hit children? Oh no, it's because my mother hit me. Oh, okay. And then it's generational. So you have to break the cycle. And the only way to break the cycle is identify some of the red flags in the decisions that we make. And with some people, it's extreme. I think with some people, it even needs therapy. I needed over a year of therapy to be able to get to a place where I am, to say, okay, I'm Karabo, and this is how I function, and this is how I make decisions, and this is where I need to change my decisions. It didn't, like, I don't hit my child. I don't constantly shout at my child. And I'm not saying I'm a perfect parent, but I'm doing it as consciously and intentionally as possible to recognize what I'm teaching her right now, even in our small interactions, is going to set her up for the kind of adult she becomes. Because right now, like, in all honesty, it's so easy to bully Black people in corporate spaces, right? Because we have been taught not to speak up for ourselves. When you speak up in a Black household, why are you talking? You are a child. You're not supposed to talk. Exactly. It's those small interactions that have taught us to be the kind of adults that we are. So if we don't parent consciously, if we don't do it intentionally, then we're actually breaking our kids without even recognizing that we're breaking them.
Yes.
So we need to do that self-work. We really need to get to a place of identifying, why do we make the decisions that we make, and how can we change them, not to better suit society, because society is going to tell you something different, but how you want to raise your child to be.
So,
right? Those goals have to be clear for you, and then you won't let anything else influence your decision. If someone wants you to hit them because they did something wrong, you're like, no, I don't hit my kids. I talk to my kids.
Yeah. So you triggered two questions. Mami Ayanda is an advocate of, especially now that she too has had her own children. So she often says she would advise parents not to get into parenthood early. So at the age of 35, that's when she would say you can consider having a child, but not earlier. And then my question then is, would you agree with that concept? And then secondly is to ask, at what point do we get to do the self-work? And sometimes certain things we don't know that we have them until we have children. Some issues we don't know about them until we have children. And so when you have children and you realize that you have to do self-work, at what stage, how do you then go about it? Because it's not like you can say, I want to pause being a parent and then do self-work. And then I'll come back and be a parent. How do you get to do self-work?
So the first point, also Yanda, is that, okay, so I hear the sentiment, right? I don't want to set a timeline to it to say 35, because there are some 35-year-olds that have no idea who they are, right? So my thing is having having children when you are in a state of not really knowing who you are, knowing yourself is tricky. And that's exactly what happened to me, right?
Yeah.
I was in like emotional turmoil when I became a mother, because I had no actual self awareness, and I was 27 when I had a child. So there are some 27-year-olds that have a much better understanding of who they are because their self work started much earlier.
Yeah.
And not every person that's gonna need self work at the end of it. Like some people started off much earlier. I mean, I have a friend who's the same age as I am, and like he gets himself completely. He knows what his triggers are because he grew up in a family that nourished that for him, right? That made
Yeah.
mental health a priority in their home. So if mental health wasn't a priority in your home, it might take you much longer to get to a place where you fully understand, not fully, but really understand who you are and which places need to be fixed. Because life is a whole journey of trying to find pieces of yourself that you lost in the past and more pieces waiting for you in the future, right? So it's a
Yeah.
journey. It's a journey. So it just depends on where you are in your journey. And sometimes things happen. And for me, motherhood, and that's why I've chosen to pursue this, is because motherhood flipped my life downside up. Like the birth of my child introduced me to a version of myself that I absolutely love because I was
Okay.
constantly triggered, right? And then
Yeah.
those triggers for me, like, oh, okay, there we go. That's what we need to do. When you don't have triggers, when it feels like everything is just la di da, then you don't do any work because you think everything is fine until you have a child. And then you can recognize. Um, but then the journey doesn't happen the same for everyone. It's not like everyone that has
Yeah.
kids and starts getting triggered realizes that. And that's why these conversations are so important. This is why it's so important to seek out information. And I mean, we're living in a digital age, and like information is everywhere. All you have to do is just seek it out. There are organizations that are running free therapy, and you can text someone and say, hey, this happened, that happened. We have an online community of people that talk about the concept of conscious parenting and doing these little small courses about how to, better parent ourselves and also better parent our children as well. Quick courses that we can pay 300, 400 rand for. I've seen them. I advertise them on my platforms. And that's the work that we have to put in order to get to a place. So it doesn't really matter if you're 35 or you're 40. So
Yeah.
postponing parenting, I don't know if it will work for everyone. But sometimes you find yourself already a parent, and
Yeah.
then you have to make the conscious decision. So the consciousness is so important. Daddy Zibuse, it's so important that you recognize, what's like, I have a problem and I need to get it fixed. Doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. You've been given a beautiful gift of a child, and sometimes that's how God works. I'm a God girl. God gives you this thing for you to be able to recognize where you need to get to. You were entrusted with this human life, so do
Yeah.
whatever you can to make sure that you raise it up, according to His will, and in the best possible way you can.
So I'm thinking as well, over and above what you're saying in terms of taking the training and equipping oneself as a parent. Unobona ekasi, you have people who are just thinking, "Good, Nina, you're talking pie in the sky. Lezi zinto enizikhulumayo izinto zenu nina abantu
Yeah,
bama-social
these are
media.
those are
Yeah, into zabelungu nina nihlala ema-suburb, nina nihlala kuboma-townhouse." But
yeah.
then the question is, how do we take these concepts of self-work, concepts of learning how to parent, especially when you're going to say kumamakho wena Karabo, your parents or your guardians, abogogo bomntanakho, and say ngisafuna ukuyofunda on how to be a parent because uyagula wena. Why would you even want to do that? Tina, we didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
So how do we take these concepts? and fine-tune them such that they are relevant to the regular person ekasi?
That's such a critical question because that's what I'm trying to do now, right? Through my
Yeah,
platform is I'm a black mom that grew up Ekasi, Soweto. Like that's where I'm from. That's where I matriculated. That's like Ngwanako Kasi, you know. And
yeah,
what I'm trying to teach now through my platforms is introduce the concept of mental health and the concept of conscious parenting to a different community of parents, which is a black community of parents. But it's such a difficult thing, to be honest, because there's still a lot more transitioning, in a mental transitioning that needs to still occur in the Black community. Um, and yeah, that work is definitely possible. I mean, if you can have a generations of girls like Karabo that grew up in the hood and said, actually, I think there's something outside of the life that I'm living that I can achieve, then
yeah,
it's definitely possible for us to go to those places and continue to educate. And this is what we're doing now. I'm part of an organization. I'm going to be hosting a different conversation on fatherhood, and the concept is dad's basekasi, you know, because in essence
yeah.
we all face the same things. We just
Yes,
handle them in a different way. That's where the difference is. But it doesn't have to matter if you are raising your child in Soweto versus raising your child in Randburg. And I understand that our challenges, in essence, are a bit different because when you're busy concerned about what you're going to eat, the last thing you're probably thinking about is conscious parenting, right? So our circumstances
yeah,
are
yeah,
so different. But we have to try. That's why I'm saying one conversation at a time. But you're right. Like I think that this even gives me like a big question mark to say how do we take these concepts and take them into a cast? You know, how do we get the concept of mental health to infiltrate in the hoods and conscious parenting? And I think there's definitely been huge strides that are happening within those communities. I mean, I said triggers, and we're saying our friends and our parents are toxic. You know, there's a
yes,
lot of transitioning that is definitely there's a lot of transition that is definitely happening in terms of mental health conversations. So
yeah,
we just need to continue and maybe even organize little programs, and get organizations together to talk about this stuff and make it practical, as
yeah,
well. And because that's what I try to do. Like I try to talk about a typical morning that I have with my child and try and teach parents, Ruti, instead of getting frustrated about your child wasting time. You know what you were saying in the morning about being rough nomtana because they're wasting your time. I give practical solutions to say, sing with your child, us like be silly with them, laugh, dance, do whatever they can just to laugh, and don't be serious, because now if you're serious in the morning, they're also serious and then they're also grumpy. So one conversation at a time, Sibu says. That's how we win the war. But actually getting programs into the hoods is definitely going to do us some justice. But this is also how we change perspectives, because now we're in COVID times, we can't gather. So when we have online platforms like this to continue having conversations about serious issues like this, then let's continue to do that. It's just tricky because not everyone in those communities have access to, your YouTubes, and this is like a
yes,
luxury. This is a serious luxury for them. So maybe this is the work that we need to do as well, to come together as like-minded people and figure out how can we infiltrate the message into really the deeper parts of our communities, where we still think that what does the Bible say about the rod? Someone said that. Hold on, I
oh,
need to read it.
spoil the rod
Yes,
and spare the child.
yes.
Hey,
Somebody, yes.
spare the
Can I
child
just
and
read
spoil the
it?
rod. I'm butchering this.
It says, oh yeah, it's about sparing the rod. But
Spare the
someone said,
rod and spoil the child.
spoil the child. So someone tweeted, Zima Sanmabeni, I saw this on Facebook the other day. She said, spare the rod in the Bible does not refer to corporal punishment. A rod is what was used by shepherds to guide the flock. That verse means if you don't provide guidance to your children, you will be spoiling them. That's the correct interpretation. So right, and I love that, so much because like in the deeper parts of our communities where I grew up as well, that's what we use to justify why we hit our children. We use the Bible to say, no, God said we must spare the rod or else we'll spoil the child. Like, but what did God mean? God can't be giving you reasons to hit your children when God is love. I mean, God is love. So how are you using the concept of love to justify? So we really need let's come together. Let's come together as organizations and see how we can get sponsorships to actually run these programs in communities that don't have access to StreamYard.
I think another scripture that is often used, it's on Proverbs 22.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and get this one right now this time. I butchered the previous one. Foolishness is bound in the heart of the child, and the rod of correction will drive it out. I think that's another one that's just been. I've also taken it out of context, but this context that you've given now in terms of guidance and correction, kind of puts it all together there.
Yeah. I mean, the rod, we're seeing the rod as something to hit, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the rod is just you being used as an instrument to guide your child. So that's what we need to do. We also need to go into these spaces and, help each other learn how to differently interpret certain verses in the Bible that we've been taught. Because it's a generational thing. We were taught that by our parents, and our parents were taught by their parents and their parents. You know what's interesting is that in the Black community, physical abuse dates back to even the slave times. I know we're running out of time, just 2 minutes, right? So physical abuse runs back to the slave times. When you look at the William Lynch letter, which was a slave owner, who was asked how you can better discipline or make your black slaves less disobedient, he advised them, beat them into submission, right? So stuff like, that was in 1712 already, during slave time. 1712. And in 2021, we still want to beat our children into submission? Come on. There has to be some transitioning that happens to say, we can't do that. We were taught to do that. But come on, like we are transitioning as Black people as well. So we can define how we want to discipline our child outside of what William Lynch said we should do to discipline Black people into obedience.
Yeah, I think if you and if I was to be in conversation with you, we could probably talk the whole day, because one thought leads to another, and there's so much to unpack in that thought. Before we know it, we would have spent a full day,
20 hours. Yeah. Yeah, I'm saying the whole day because I've got the potential to go on. So.
And I'll be the first one to acknowledge that even the topic that we are tackling today is not a topic that we can introduce and unpack and provide solutions all in one go. I'm inviting anyone and everyone who will be watching this to come back at a later stage and comment and share that input and say this is how they think we can work towards this. If there's someone who thinks it can be done better, then yes, let's by all means do that, because we don't profess to know it all, to be it all. We can't even provide one solution for everything. Each solution has to be catered for each particular case that we approach.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's about the coming together of people. Like if we bring different minds together to talk about the same topic, I think amazing things can come out of it. That's the point of workshops and seminars, to say we're bringing minds together to talk about the problems that we have, and solutions can come out of it. That's the brilliance of the human minds, is that we're actually capable of coming up with solutions. So continue having these conversations. Well done. This is amazing. I'm really proud of the work that you guys are doing. So continue having more of these conversations, and solutions will definitely come up as we go forward.
Thank you, Mommy, for your time. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Yeah, it's been the fastest, half an hour? Oh, no, it's not
Yeah,
even half an hour.
yeah, we
40
pushed.
minutes.
We
It's been very quick. So I'm hoping for more conversations, and I think we will share across all our platforms when we engage further. But especially the ones where we have to practicalize solutions and also come up with bespoke solutions for those people who are not privy to the online platforms, people who don't have the same access as we do,
yeah.
just how we can reach them. And I think that's something I'm also looking forward to.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was a good way to start my Monday. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. And
Thank you so
goodbye
much.
to everyone. Don't forget to tune in same time tomorrow.